Phineas fixed up my arm and my shoulder pretty good and decided that I needed some time away from the investigation. Hershey came back to town and took our statements, albeit a little put off by Iron's horns. Her cloak got torn in the fight, and we came up with the idea that she was in a theater troupe, and she was just super into character. But when I saw Iron's attempt at a soliloquy, our story was damaged significantly, but I think Hershey had bigger fish to fry than just to bust a lying actor. I decided to go back to work as Iron took up a new hobby, one that she was admittedly rather good at. We bought her a new hood, and she helped the local gardener plant flowers. Because of her sharp eye and talons, she was able to spot the most fertile spots in the soil and dig perfectly neat holes planting flowers. And what's more, she smiled the whole time. But it wasn't a warm smile like you'd expect. It was more of a, yes, more blood, psychopathic smile. If therapists existed in this era, she would have needed about 20 of them. Anyways, sitting around doing nothing is the cure for nothing itself. Besides, idle hands are the devil's playthings. God, I feel so dirty every time I use that idiom. I was at the Thirsty Lion serving food to keep up on my recipe hunting and making sure my cooking expertise was warmed up and topped off for the road. That waitress, Tara, came into the back. She was nice enough and seemed to really care about me for some reason. I didn't mind. Dealing with Iron all the time made me actually really enjoy the positive attention. I noticed the scratches on her arm. They looked rough in that lighting. She must have a cat, I figured.
Hey, handsome. We got an order for table 6. Roasted moutards with mixed vegetables, steak and potato soup with, quote, chef's choice of spice, and honey roasted nuts on the sides of both.
Coming right up. Sure is busy out there. What's the occasion?
No occasion. Sometimes we usually get slammed at this time of day. Not used to this, huh?
I worked in a restaurant back home for about a year, so I'm sort of familiar. Still, the people in Vespera are a lot more neat and tidy with their food. I mean, look at that guy. Elbows on the table, not even using a cloth to wipe his mouth. Ugh. Chunks of meat in his beard.
That's how it is here, darling. Although I won't lie, I'd love to see Vespera someday.
She leaned over the counter next to me, getting near my face.
Think you could take me with you?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going right home after I leave town.
You're too fun. I was joking, of course. Well, kind of. Anyways, Sanders still is my home, ever since I left my hometown.
Yeah? Didn't like it there?
Kinda the opposite. It didn't like me there.
What do you mean?
I don't want to get into it. Doesn't matter. Anyways, I love it here. I only had one complaint before you showed up. No cute boys. But lo and behold, my prayers are answered.
Really? Weird. Some men rolled into town at the same time as us. Crazy coincidence.
Oh Lord. You are something else. Anyways, you mind staying late? We'll pay.
Tara clasped her hands together, bowing politely. I smiled at her demeanor. How could I say no? Anything to help out.
Great. Once everyone's gone, we'll need help wiping tables. Shouldn't take too long with all that manpower.
It was a busy night. Travelers from nearby villages and wandering hunters from all over stopped in for a meal or drink. Throughout the next few hours, I was sweating like Edith telling lies to Richter. Okay, I will retire that joke. Afterwards, a lot of servers and bartenders left for the evening. Tara stayed behind after her shift was over to pick up the slack. She was a hell of a worker. She zoomed around the place like a woman possessed. Probably would make a hell of a wife. What? She tossed me a rag, and I rolled up my sleeves, ready to work. Tara asked me a lot of questions about Vespera and my life in general. I broke her the bad news that I grew up an orphan in the slums, so I didn't get to see much of the city. For some reason, she seemed fascinated yet sympathetic. She seemed to truly care about my past and show actual emotion toward it. Unlike someone, at first at least.
God, I couldn't imagine growing up without a father. Even a bad one. I'm so sorry, Xander.
It is what it is. Made me who I am today. One hell of a cook.
You're more than that, you know. You came in here, working minimum wage, just trying to help us out. You're a really sweet guy.
Thanks. I wish I knew what to say.
Don't say anything. Keep your arms working. These tables ain't cleaning themselves.
Right. We kept working diligently, getting stray shreds of meat and vegetables off the tables, and then quickly swept the floors. We were making great time. She bent over to grab something on the floor, and something fell out of the top of her shirt. Okay, I just happened to be glancing in that spot at the time. It was a pendant swaying from her neck. It looked like a three-pronged fork, with the middle prong longer than the other two, with gold flecks on the outer prongs. Tara gripped it and quickly put it back in her shirt. I furrowed my brow. Pretty necklace. Never seen any like it.
I'm not wearing a necklace. You didn't see anything.
Yeah, it was right there.
You didn't see one.
What's with the attitude? I didn't mean to offend you if I did. I was just saying it's a pretty necklace. Sorry if it's a sore spot. She stiffened and looked at me nervously. She stood up straight and walked over to me. She looked around and pulled it out again. It was really pretty up close, albeit cheap looking. The chain around her neck was rusted and worn out. Wow, this is really pretty. Never seen anything like it. Where'd you get it?
My father gave it to me when I was born. All the people in my village wore one.
Where are you from? Never heard of any village that forces its residents to wear jewelry.
Woolheart. We had a locust swarm a few years back. That's what we're famous for, I guess.
Sounds rough.
I think a mage did it, though. Locusts aren't indigenous to Woolheart or the surrounding area.
Hope you catch the bastard. Anyway, isn't Woolheart like nowhere near here?
It's 40 miles south, give or take. I took several carriages to get here.
Man, do you ever miss it? She sighed, putting her necklace back in her shirt, and turned away. She leaned on a table in front of her, putting her head down. Tara?
There's nothing to miss. Woolheart is gone.
I blinked, taken aback. Woolheart was gone? I hadn't heard of any villages disappearing recently. Vesperian scouts were second to none. Any city, any town, or goddamn outhouse in the entire continent was looked after, and if any had problems or threats, Vesperian knights were dispatched immediately. What do you mean, gone? This place just disappear off all the maps or something?
If only that were the case. I should probably try saying that again.
Tara faced me again, leaning her rear on the table, folding her hands in front of her waist. She looked at me with a somber expression.
The people of Woolheart are gone. Dead, Xander.
What? How could an entire town of people just...
They were murdered. The entire village was massacred.
I don't understand.
It was a few years ago. I was helping my father with some chores and I noticed two men come to town. Stoic and unmoving. Scary looking men. Neither of them spoke a word. The entire village treated them like garbage because they were wind mages.
My ear twitched when I heard that last sentence. There was very little chance this was a coincidence. Maybe Tara knew something about the murderer? Even if she did. Now wasn't the time to ask.
They minded their own business, even though everyone treated them horribly. Then one day, after a drunkard threw an empty bottle at one of their heads, they used wind magic to push him back. My people saw this and threatened to kill them with pitchforks and sickles. Then, ultimately, they retaliated. They slaughtered everyone they saw wearing the necklace I'm wearing now. Swore to remove everyone from existence bearing this amulet. After I knew the coast was clear, I ran.
Tara was struggling not to cry. This was difficult for her. The fear was still there in her eyes. The pain was still a looming shadow ever present behind her.
The worst part is that one of the people from the village helped them do it. I saw everything, and I will never forgive them. Never. Never.
Hey, it's enough. You're safe now.
Am I? I've heard about those murders. I hear the whispers of everyone that comes here. Victims of wind magic. All of them. Can I truly not find peace from that horrific night?
Tara, look at me. I cupped her cheeks in my hands and gently raised her head to face mine. Her eyes were red. She was trembling. You're gonna be okay. We're gonna catch them. I promise.
What if they come for me?
Then I promise you, I will be right there next to you to keep you safe. I'm not just a chef, you know.
Really? Are you a knight?
I wish. Yeah, I'm a knight, and it's my duty to keep fair maidens safe, is it not?
I'm the fair maiden, huh? I like that.
Well, fair maiden, let's get these tables finished up and I'll walk you home afterwards. We tidied up the place in a quick manner. She was still shaken up from the conversation, or maybe it was just the cool, crisp air in town. Either way, I walked next to her all the way to her house and stopped at the front door. Be sure to keep your door locked at night, even after this case is solved. I know I'm a city boy, but the countryside ain't safe. Even I know that.
Tell me about it. Been on the run since that night and feel like I haven't slept with both eyes closed since. Thank you, Xander.
Wasn't any trouble. You don't live too far from the inn.
No, not that. Walking me home was nice, but I feel like even if it's temporary, you're my first real friend. I feel safe with you.
That makes me happy to hear. It's getting late. I'm gonna head back.
One more thing.
She grabbed my hand and turned me back toward her and placed her lips gently on my cheek. Time froze, and all the cool air turned warm as I heard her softly kiss me on the cheek. She pulled away, giggling to herself. I stared at her with the dumbest expression on my face as she waved me goodnight. I waved her goodnight, but about 10 seconds after she'd already closed the door, I grinned like a madman as I jumped down the stairs to her house and jogged home. A cute girl just kissed me. She freaking kissed me. Who cares if it was on the cheek? Xander Cool is back in action. Note to self, never use that name again. I got back inside my room and hopped in bed. Phineas was already snoring, and no amount of sound could kill my good feeling I had that night. But that feeling wouldn't last. I knew it then. Knowing what happened shortly after, I'll never forget it now. The next morning was bright and sunny, almost as though reminding me of how I felt the night before. I still felt the gentle crispness of Tara's lips on my cheek. God, I felt so lame. I mean, the girl just kissed me on the cheek. No big deal, but I don't know. I felt so warm when I thought of it. The opposite of how someone made me feel. Here she dropped by my room early in the morning and let me know there was some people who claimed they might have caught a whiff of the murderer. Sounded like a solid lead to me, so I decided to take it. On one hand, I was happy that we had a lead, but I felt like they were just coming along too slow. We needed a big break in the case, and I mean a big one. As in, literally catch the guy in the act, whoever he is. Felt like our time in Sanderstill would need to run short for several reasons. Firstly, there was the fact that I needed to get back to Vespera and back to work. Then there was the blacksmith we snaked out of a priceless sword. Oh, right. I almost forgot. My memory. Ugh. We had to stop our impending doom at the hands of dragons by healing the bratty one in our midst.
Yes, ma'am. These carnations are perfect for such decorations. They give off a sort of maturity sense, yet spry youth. Perfect for a woman like yourself.
I looked to my left to see Iron holding flowers and handing them to a middle-aged woman. Iron was wearing some funny clothing. Oversized denim overalls with no shoes, of course. A massive white shirt underneath, huge brown gloves, and a straw hat with white flaps underneath it that hid her horns and pointed ears perfectly. She looked like a total dork. She flashed the woman a wide grin and waved her away after taking the money. She put her hands on her hips and took a breath. She noticed me immediately and grinned, waving to me to come over, which I did.
Alexander! Welcome! Have you come to buy flowers as well?
Huh? Oh, well, actually,
I wondered if Tara liked flowers. I wouldn't know where to start.
Well, a beginner, I see. I figured as much. While you may know your way around the kitchen, there's no denying it, you're totally hopeless when it comes to the garden. Such the life of a newbie.
Didn't you start like 2 days ago?
The expert is speaking. If you've come for flowers that are decorative, atmospheric, yet not distracting from everything else, I would recommend some white lilies and daffodils. They're brilliant for bringing some vibrance to a dimly lit room. So, perhaps you're looking for an icebreaker. Violets. Violets are brilliant for that. Or maybe...
What about to give to a girl? To make her like you?
You daft! Women aren't so simple that they'll fall for you at the first sight of a gift. They're excellent presents to give in the spirit of romance, but they usually only work if you have a chance in the first place. Which, knowing you...
Shut it.
Well, if you aren't here to buy any flowers, don't waste my time. I'm very busy.
I wasn't here to buy anything. Hershey dropped by this morning and gave me a lead to check out.
And you came to get me?
No, I was just walking down...
Oh, I don't know. I'm very busy. I'm not sure I can help you this time.
I wasn't even...
Very well. Since you're hopeless without me, I shall accompany you. Let me tell my employer I'm leaving early.
Are you even listening to me?
Iron scampered away and I held my hand out to get her attention, which failed. I sighed, looked around at Iron's work. To be honest, it was nothing short of impeccable, not a speck of dirt out of place. All the flowers were blooming perfectly. I knew she had a soft spot for gardening. Wondered what else this girl could do.
All right, fool. You may thank me now.
Thank you for barging into my business uninvited.
Ignore... Hey!
Iron walked next to me, straw hat covering the sun. My short-sleeved brown tunic was perfect for this weather, as the sun was particularly unkind that day. I knew if I stayed out of the shade too long, I'd surely get burnt. So strange that the air could go from cold to hot on a day's notice. Never happened in Vespera.
I just don't know how Tara does it.
The suddenness of her remarks snapped me from my thoughts. I blinked and looked over at her.
Does what?
Flirt.
What?
Well, I tried to do it today, and it did not go well.
What do you mean it did not go well? Did you see someone you liked?
Are you kidding? Of course not! Like I'd ever consider one of you hairless apes attractive. I did it to ensure a sale. But think I might have messed up. Just a tinsy bit.
How so?
Well, the first one didn't go so well because I was far too subtle. I just didn't make it obvious enough. I said things like, these would go well with your eye shade because it matches your irises perfectly.
Doesn't seem like a compliment, more of a statement of fact.
Yes, that's what my employer said. So, I tried a little more complimentary and forward, and somehow it went worse.
How so?
All I said is that the man would make a fine mate for the winter months, and his face went white. And he left.
Wow, can't imagine why. That'd work on me.
Really?
No, that's horrendous! What is wrong with you?
In any case, I was told not to flirt with the customers anymore. It's a shame. I hear it's a really effective tactic to get them to buy more.
Yeah, I think wearing sexy clothing would too. Why are you still wearing that?
What do you mean? This garment is incredible. It's so comfortable and stylish. Look at me.
Iron spread her tiny arms wide and looked at me with a big grin. I blushed after seeing her toothy smile. What the hell was wrong with me? Why did that trigger butterflies in my stomach?
I suppose if it's comfortable, keep it on.
Besides, this hat is genius. Now, no one will think me a princess.
From your attitude, I doubt people would have anyway.
I heard that. And for the record, we'll remember it when deciding whether or not to save you from inevitable doom.
Oh, wait, I was just kidding!
How very convenient. You only ever seem to be joking when your life depends on it.
Vindictive, aren't you?
Oh, come now, Alexander. Only joking.
Iron followed me to our destination through the streets of Sanderstill. The dirt road was horrid. I hated dirt. It was coarse and rough, and it gets everywhere. We passed by some guys, and they were whispering about something as we passed. Iron stopped, and I stopped with her. I looked at her curiously. She seemed to be listening.
Wonder when those travellers are gonna fuck off. Been here too long. They piss me off. All they do is take up space and food. What about what the villagers ourselves need? Nope, they don't care. They just take and take.
I tugged Iron's arm, and she didn't move.
He's talking about us. I can feel it.
Yeah, well, part of being human means not everyone's gonna like you. Let's keep moving.
He's being disrespectful. We aren't doing anything wrong, are we?
No, we're not. But there's no reason that we need to start anything. He's just being sour.
I'm gonna—
You're not gonna do anything. You're a princess. You're above his words. Let's walk away.
She looked at me, unsure of what to do, but ultimately decided to heed my words. She turned away and walked beside me.
The worst of them is the short one.
So, it's at this point I chose to be the biggest hypocrite known to man. I stopped walking and my brows furrowed. Iron looked at me curiously, then back at them.
Puts away food like no man I've ever seen. And looks like a pig while she does it. Probably why she's the only one of them who wears a hood. 'Cause she's fuck ugly, I bet.
The man let out a disgusting guffaw, and I turned towards Iron, who looked down. She adjusted her hat to cover her face further. My gloved hands balled into fists, and I turned around. And before I knew it,
That's kind of funny, you calling someone else ugly, don't you think?
I was saying stupid shit. He turned to face me slowly, his friend with him. His face was covered in dirt, his body in shoddy tattoos. He looked at me, squinted eyes.
And what exactly do you mean by that?
I wasn't going to say anything, but after looking at Iron hide her face in embarrassment, I couldn't help it. Besides, if the train is already rolling and you can't stop it, might as well blow the whistle.
Well, you ever heard the phrase, don't cast stones if you live in a glass house?
What are you trying to say?
What about, pot calling the kettle black?
What the hell are you talking about?
Fine. I'll spell it out for you. I find it painfully ironic you're calling someone else ugly when you look like your parents conceived you during an outhouse quickie at a fucking family reunion. That is what I'm talking about.
Well, if I was trying to poke a bear, that sure did it. People around us were now looking, and he looked red-faced and humiliated to get called out in public.
You think you're funny, traveler? You've done nothing but leech off of us since you got here. Sitting on your ass, taking our things. What about us? What about the natives of the village? Maybe someone ought to remove you permanently.
Be my guest! But we have hardly been sitting around. Had a meal in the last 2 weeks at the Thirsty Lion? I probably cooked it. Noticed a lot of less bandits running around town? My friend Edith probably turned them in. Bought flowers in the last few days? Noticed a pleasant aroma in town? The short one probably planted those. Meanwhile, you look like you've been drunk for at least, I had to guess, 4 days? What have you done besides wander around town being an asshole?
Why don't I do something now? I'll take you out back and beat you to a pulp, and mount the short one and make you watch.
Ah yes, cuckoldry. Classic threat. Although I question the tactics of having your prick out in the same room as someone with a giant sword. Who knows what one might lose in the process?
Are you threatening me?
Just mind your own business. Leave us alone. We're not doing anything to you, and before you know it, we'll be gone forever. Mind your manners until then. It's not polite to insult people for no reason.
He got in my face and looked down at me. His nostrils flared.
I've killed before. Don't think for 1 second I won't do it again.
I gripped my sword hilt promptly.
Walk away before I make this town famous for something it doesn't want to be famous for.
The crowd around us was watching intently, waiting for the sparks to fly. Iron stood behind me, her talons drawn. On one hand, I thought she was ready to assist me if needed, but then I remembered she'd probably use them on me after being a dumbass. The man's friend grabbed his arm and gestured towards the tavern. After staring me down for a few more moments, he agreed and walked away. I released the hilt, and I turned toward Iron, walking back to the direction we were headed.
So much for being above his words.
You are. I'm not.
You preach at me not to start anything, and what do? You could have gotten us into some serious trouble.
I know. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself.
Why? He wasn't even talking about you. He was talking about me.
I know. That's why I couldn't help myself.
What?
I don't know. I get really pissed off when people disrespect my friends.
Wait. Friend?
Well, yeah, you're my friend, aren't you?
I'm a princess. I was never allowed to have friends. I was told they cloud your judgment and make you act irrationally.
Yeah. They can do that. But they're worth it. They're people you care about, however much, and whatever way is good for you. Love is all important, even if it's platonic. So, yeah. Yeah, you're my friend.
Very well. Call me whatever you like. However, I will not call you as such. Because when I turn back, I will have no interest in human affairs, and that includes you.
Should have seen that coming.
However, I will allow you to call me your friend, if you feel so inclined. It's not like I care, one way or the other.
Alright, whatever you say.
Besides, it's not up for me to tell you who to be friends with, even if they are hideous. Well, at least I suppose you're not as shallow as I once thought.
What are you talking about? Who is hideous?
Why, me, of course. I mean, I've heard enough people saying so. I don't mind it. It's only temporary. The rest of you humans have to deal with it for life. Being ugly isn't so bad now that I think about it.
What? Hold on, who said you're ugly?
I mean, that man, for one. You heard him. It's the whole reason you got so angry. Anger isn't good for your skin, I hear.
Well, you shouldn't listen to that guy. He's a dumbass. Did you see him? I mean, if you think all humans are ugly, that guy looked like a troll.
Don't you insult trolls. They're very kind and shy creatures. But I suppose your point still stands. He was not very easy on the eyes, was he?
And whoever else has called you ugly is just as stupid.
I've called myself that.
Well, I didn't mean everyone who's...
And so have you?
I'd like to make a retraction on the word stupid.
I'm really not bothered by it, Alexander. It's a temporary form. Humans care far too much about physical appearance anyway.
I guess, but it's not even like I meant it.
What?
Huh?
Iron turned to face me, almost stopping me in my tracks. We were out of the village at this point, and on the trail in the woodlands. She looked at me, confused. My neck grew warm.
What did you say?
I didn't say anything.
No, you did. I heard it.
Then what did I say?
That's what I'm asking you. What did you say?
Nothing.
Her eyes squinted as she grabbed the collar of my shirt and pulled me down to eye level. Her nose touched mine as she stared into my eyes. More like glared, really. There it was again. That warmth, that unmistakable life that exuded from her body. Her lips parted slowly as her eyes stayed on me.
It isn't polite to mumble. And just so you're aware, in my city, it's a sign of disrespect. Talking under your breath only occurs when you're saying something you have no business saying. So I can only assume that you were saying something you shouldn't. I highly recommend that you keep your mouth shut if you're going to say things like that.
Yep. Sorry.
Good. And don't do it again. Because I will hear you if you do. Lord knows my betrothed could never do that.
Right. Wait, what?
We're losing daylight. Alexander, pick up your feet.
Before I knew it, she was about like 20 feet ahead of me. Shook off my thoughts and caught up quickly. I followed her to a fork in the road. One path was cleared and relatively welcoming. I saw the sun shining through the trees on the path as if to say, "This way." The other way was covered in cracked leaves and snapped branches. I passed by it, walking the sunny way. It didn't go long before I stopped and turned. Iron looked over at me, questioningly. I bent down and inspected the dead branch. The cut was clean, perfectly straight and clean. No shavings, no chippings. I looked back at Iron and tossed her the branch. She looked at it for a moment before looking at me, knowingly. We walked through the semi-blocked path cautiously, trying to maintain balance. As we approached the source, we noticed a massive tree cut down, blocking our path and our view. I sighed and walked over to it, attempting to pick it up. With my totally not skinny and definitely super buff arms, I was able to accomplish nothing more than minor back pain. Thought about scaling over it, but I felt as though we needed to move it. Perhaps it was blocking someone in. After all, I heard Hershey mention the person we needed to see was in a house just down the forest path outside of the village.
Okay, can't lift this thing. Oh, that's way too heavy. Oh, that's gonna hurt in the morning.
Hopeless. There's not a masculine bone in your body, is there?
Look, you're way stronger. You mind giving it a lift?
Sorry, what was that? You said I was stronger? I didn't quite catch it.
You're stronger than me.
Oh yes, now that's music. How much stronger exactly?
Would you just lift it?
Fine. As soon as you tell me how much better looking I am than you.
Do you want me to go full Prince Charming like I did at the Apple stall?
Stay back, you cretin! You are lucky I didn't cook your fingers for grabbing my hands without consent.
Iron turned around and bent over to pick up the tree. I watched her intently. Just before she lifted, she turned her head toward me.
I know what you're looking at. You aren't subtle.
I wasn't.
Oh, don't play dumb with me. Talking about apple stalls, but the boy has peaches on the mind. Look away before I poke you in the eyes.
I stuck my tongue against my cheek, crossing my arms and looking away.
Smug little.
Oh, by all means, finish that sentence. I'm just dying to hear it.
A few moments later, I heard a loud rustling sound, along with the sound of wood bending. Iron grunted, and I could tell this tree was much heavier than that of Ia. After a few more grunts, all the sound stopped. I looked forward to see the tree was upright again, if not leaning against the other trees. The only thing in front of us now was the bush. We walked towards the bush together.
I feel like we're hitting a dead end with this investigation. All we found is a crumb of evidence here and there, but we're no closer to finding who exactly did all this than we were at the start.
Come on, Alexander, don't give up so easily. You, of all of us, have worked extremely hard at finding the culprit. If you give up, how do you expect the rest of us to feel?
Was that a compliment?
Savor it.
I just hope this lead actually...
We walked through the bush at last, and what I saw on the other side was nothing short of pure, violent destruction. It was a homestead, a house on a sizable yard, and it was coated in sliced and diced lumber and trees. Chips and chunk of foliage and house were all over the place. The house's door was torn off the hinges, and there was blood on the front of the steps.
Hands out. What the fuck?
Mercy. What in the world happened here?
I'm going inside. There's blood near the entrance. Cover my back.
As you wish.
I took a step forward and I felt arms wrap around my torso as though someone had grabbed me from behind. I looked down to see brown gloves. Iron came up and hugged me from behind.
Not literally, you...
I slapped her fingers and she yelped.
I meant follow me inside and be ready to fight. Make sure no one ambushes us from behind.
Humans and their stupid euphemisms. You should have been more clear. That hurt.
I motioned toward the broken house, walked slowly across the yard. I gripped my sword slowly, quietly unsheathed it. I stepped around the dried blood on the step and slowly walked inside. The floorboards lightly creaked under my boots. As I saw the interior of the house, it was much worse. Wooden beams fell over the table. There was blood on the floor around it. I grabbed the beam and pulled it off the table before inspecting the surface. It was cracked and had a few pieces of food on it. The beam next to it had clean slices through it, just like the branches. I looked behind me to see Iron not there. I looked around to see her in the kitchen kneeling down.
Damn it, I said stay behind me, this little girl does not listen to a word I say.
I walked over to her and noticed she was inspecting a man. A dead one. He was sitting on the ground back against the wall. As you can expect, it was pretty easy to tell the cause of death. The blood over the clean cuts was dried. He'd been dead for a little while, but not very long at all.
We were too slow. Again.
We couldn't have known that. We'll have to let the detective know about these bodies.
Bodies? As in plural?
She pointed to the right. Sure enough, there was another person there. This person was a woman, much younger. She was covered in less cuts, but seemed to bleed out instead of being killed from the wounds themselves. Judging by her body condition, I guess she died before the man. What struck me was odd, besides the wind magic slices, was a thin mark around her neck, as if she was strangled with something slender, like a string. Why would the murderer bother strangling her if they could just throw a wind blade at her? I stood up and motioned Iron to follow. She nodded and kept behind me as we walked out of the wrecked house.
I'll let Hershey know. Then we'll tell some people to come help get this cleaned up.
I walked towards the bush and noticed Iron wasn't following me. She was looking off to the side. I sighed and walked back toward her. She was looking at a shoddy, crumbled shed. Before I could say anything, she walked toward it, stopping in front of it. I slowly walked next to her and eyed the door.
I know someone is in there. I can hear you shuffling about. Come out, or I'll burn it down with you inside.
Iron!
Shh!
The door flew open, and in a fury, a small woman started swinging and wildly flailing a pitchfork in all directions with a war cry. We jumped back as she quickly became out of breath. We dropped our guard as she lowered her pitchfork, out of energy.
You'll not take me with him, damn you! I got plenty of years left, and you'll not take a damn one of them.
Easy, lady! Drop the tool!
Get the hell out of here, you murderous dogs, before I stick you through the guts.
This old crone's lost her mind. She's speaking nonsense.
Are you with them?
Who's them?
You ain't with them?
I'm sorry, miss, but we have no idea who you're referring to. Do you know what happened here?
Do I? I was here the whole time. Got a front row seat, I did.
Is that your husband and daughter inside the house?
Is he dead?
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Better him than me. At least there's that.
Sorry?
Yes, that's my husband. Or it was. George, his name was. A lecherous bastard. He was seeing girls at the tavern. Came home stinking of vodka and less savory parts of women.
Was the woman inside your daughter?
Heavens no. I've never seen her in my life. At first, I thought he brought a mistress home for once. The brazenness, I thought, the gall. Turns out, she were already a corpse when we found her on our property. I know George wouldn't stoop that low.
Awfully mobile for a corpse to simply appear on one's lawn.
George said she crawled out as far as the porch before she expired. When we turned her over, she were covered in cuts. Looks like someone did a bang-up job cutting the poor girl up. Can't imagine the pain. Good thing I don't have to.
What happened after that?
We're poor, George and I. We never had much. Saw something around the girl's fingers and neck. Took all the shiny rocks she had. I was hoping to sell them at the market before those two came. Now, I'll be too busy cleaning up this mess.
Those two?
You're not with them, are you?
You're just going to keep on asking us that. How about you tell us who they are, if you please?
Who do you think? The man who did this. They came in the darkest of night. They said nothing. Who are you, I said. What are you doing here, I said. Nothing. Not a peep. So I told them to leave.
And?
And? Look around you. What do you think happened? A storm brewed around them and started shooting wind everywhere, cutting down our trees and throwing everything around. George, he told me to run. He was a right bastard, a lecherous creep, but in the end, he was a good man. And I'm alive because of him. I hid in that shed for 2 days now. I was afraid to leave because of what might have been waiting for me on the outside. Then you two showed up. And thank God you did.
These two men, do you think they're responsible for the girl's death as well? We just want to witness testimony.
Testimony? I'm sorry, I never learned to read. But I will say that when those two men showed up, cuts and gashes and destruction followed. The girl's wounds looked a lot like what happened to our home. That's all I'll say.
You get a good look at these men?
We're dark, so no. But I remember that one of them had long dark hair, no beard, and the other one had no hair and a long dark beard. Total opposites. I found that very striking. Both were somewhat tall, but they said absolutely nothing, so I couldn't tell you what they sound like.
Seems like we finally found our murderers. Who could have guessed there would have been two of them?
Thank you, ma'am. You've been very helpful. I'll send for someone to come assist with repairing this place when I get back to town. But, could I have the shiny rocks, please? Those are technically useful evidence.
Damn. I knew I wouldn't get a chance to sell them. Oh well, if it leads to justice, take 'em.
The woman went back into the shed and walked out with rings and a necklace. She put the rings in my hand and gave the necklace to Iron. I inspected the rings, and as I thought, the rings were very little help. Seeing this young woman just simply liked jewelry. I sighed and put them in my pocket to give to Hershey later. Thank you. Take care of yourself, miss.
I'll never understand humans and their knickknacks. Creation's so cheap and shoddy.
I looked over at her and smiled. She sure had a lot to learn about humans. I watched her twirl the amulet with her hands and motioned her to leave. We got all the way to the bush before I stopped. I reached over and snatched the amulet from her, inspecting it.
You greedy little magpie!
It looked terribly familiar to me. It was a 3-pronged fork, with the middle prong longer than the other two, with gold flecks on the outer prongs. The trident-shaped amulet struck a chord with me. I knew of only one other person who had this kind of necklace. All the other people in my village wore one, she said. And she also said that those men, those 2 wind mages, swore to remove everyone from existence who bear that amulet. I need to get this to Edith. We need to find those 2 men before it's too late.
Before it's too late for what, exactly? What's wrong?
Before it's too late to save Tara's life.
Are we going? Oh, I can start whenever? Oh, okay. Sorry. I've never done this before. Hey, I'm Edith. Whoa, that's a kind of a cool voice effect. Ooh, ooh. Anyway, I've been waiting to do this for a while, since Xander started doing it. So, here I am. I figure now's as good a time as any. So, Phineas and I were called upon by one of Hershey's goons to come and meet him at the morgue. He said he had some information for us regarding the 2 new bodies. Phineas and I knew who those 2 were. Xander and Iron had found 2 bodies earlier in the day. It was cloudy, droll. The wind had a soft breeze. The trees had a melancholy grayness to them. The perfect weather for how this murder mystery felt. Hopeless. How many more bodies would we find? How many more—
Boring!
What?
Boring. Listening to you try to narrate is like watching paint dry. Iron didn't do this. Xander didn't do this. I mean, good God, woman! I'm falling asleep here. Where's the pizzazz?
You kidding me with this guy? How did you get in here? How is this allowed?
Unimportant. I couldn't stand to watch you bore our guest to tears, so here I am to help. Besides, how many of these things are we in? I haven't said hello yet.
Would you pipe down? It's my turn. Xander asked me to do this. You'll get your turn eventually.
Eventually, my foot. I'm taking over.
The hell you are!
'Twas a dark and stormy night.
Give me a break. Get out of here, clown.
Fine, but don't describe the weather the entire time. Who do you think you are? Shakespeare? I'd like to be able to tell this story before I'm dead.
Ahem. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, Phineas and I had arrived at the morgue. The mortician looked up and greeted us rather bluntly, resuming his work soon after. I asked where Hershey was, and he pointed down the hall. I thanked him, and we went to greet him. Hershey was there in as casual clothes as I could have imagined him wearing, a loose shirt with baggy trousers and seemingly house shoes. I knocked on the door behind him, and he turned to greet us.
Sergeant Thames, welcome. Thanks for meeting with me. I apologize for my attire. I was in a rush, you understand.
Contrary to the saying, I find that clothes do not, in fact, make the man. No complaints here.
There's a sauce stain on your shirt.
Afraid that isn't sauce, mate.
Charming.
In any case, we're here to see those 2 bodies you mentioned.
Indeed. Before we tend to them, I'd like your expert opinion on something.
Expert opinion, huh? Sure. I'll do anything if you compliment me enough. Or buy dinner. Also a very effective tactic.
Found this guy dead about 2 hours ago. No wind mage to this one in, so you're not obligated to help, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
A corpse is a corpse. If someone's died, it's my job as a knight to find out if there's foul play.
Then you'll be either displeased or very happy to hear that I do believe there was foul play with this lot. Take a look. Wear gloves, if you must.
I don't mind getting my hands dirty. I'm not some delicate little flower. Let's see what we got here. Hershey moved aside and showed me the body. At first glance, he seemed perfectly healthy, if a little pale. However, dead bodies are rarely healthy.
Brilliant deduction, detective.
Don't you have something to do? Anyway, the body looked fine at a cursory glance, but upon further inspection, I noticed some concerning features. The first thing was the excessive veins protruding from the neck and jawline. As I inspected them, I noticed the skin was very faintly blotchy around the cheeks. I gently pulled the eyelids apart. The eye whites were yellowed, and the iris's color was fading. I checked the rest of his body. There was more yellowing around the fingernails and blood underneath them. Severe pain before death. His fingers were curled and twisted as if his last moments were spent writhing. Poor bastard. I don't like making conclusions based on symptoms. I prefer to run tests first, but if I had to guess, I'd say poisoning. Either blackboard or Zelroot.
Blackboard. Very good guess. Correct.
Why have me inspect a body when you knew what the cause of death was?
Next body, your analysis, Sergeant Holmes.
I looked at him side-eyed before shaking my head and inspecting the body. This one was an old woman. Once again, I went for a closer look. The forehead had intense, blood-red spots that ran down to her cheeks. Her ears were nearly purple in color. Her eyes were bloodshot. There was foam seeping from her lips. She suffocated. Poison.
Which one?
Let me keep looking. Her hands had warts on them. They looked like they were there before the poisoning. I flipped the palms. Bingo! Clear sign of a specific poison. There was a purple bruise-like blotch all over them. Strange. Didn't know Ulrich's flower grew in this area.
It doesn't, which makes your deduction all the more impressive. Correct.
What exactly is the purpose of this exercise?
One more, and then we can move on to the inmates victims. This way.
Any idea why he's testing you like a grade school student?
Your guess is as good as mine. Probably better at this rate.
What of this one, Holmes?
This one looked like the others, mostly normal, besides the obvious bloody stain on his chest. I opened up his tunic to reveal 3 stab wounds. 2 on the left near the heart, 1 in the dead center. Death by stab wounds. Easy.
She's a genius, everyone.
Shut up!
Correct. But look closer at the body.
I did as he said, and noticed the same symptoms as the last victim. Purple ears, blotches on the forehead, foam at the lips. I inspected his palms. Sure enough, there were purple bruises on the palms. Death by stab wounds. And Ulrich's flower?
No, stab wound. Poison was in his system, yes, but it was post-mortem. The stab wounds were covered in a thick rug, which I removed before you arrived.
Strange. But what's the point of this?
Crime used to be simple when I was a rookie. Some dumb schmuck would stab his woman to death and get caught red-handed. A few years after that, the same thing except the knife would be in the woman's hand who was dead. After that, the weapon would be missing entirely, and the murderer would argue that no weapon, no crime.
A horrendous argument. Obviously it didn't hold up.
It didn't, you're right. But it's very concerning, don't you think?
What's so concerning about a bunch of morons getting caught with little thought put into the kill?
What's concerning is that it used to be no thought. Then there was little. Now there is some. Soon there will be a lot. Don't you see? Murderers are getting smarter. Criminals are finding what doesn't work through the failures of others and are avoiding those tactics. They're brazen and ballsy and go for the kill with a different strategy that they are sure will work. Well, it doesn't now. Murders are getting harder and harder to catch.
What does this all have to do with me?
Kid, I'm getting old. I've been doing this for 37 winters. My wife left me many years back because this has consumed my life, and it's getting harder and harder to keep up. But you're sharp. You're through. You're destined to make a hell of a detective.
Not interested in detective work. I'm a knight through and through.
Yeah, and I was a baker at your age. Detective work isn't chosen. It chooses you. You may see what I mean one day. The purpose of this is to show you that the common killer isn't so simple to catch anymore. So smart ones, crafty ones, you need to really think outside of the box to catch.
And sometimes it's the innocent that get accused. Oh, woe is me.
Innocent my ass. You might as well have written out your confession and slid it to Xander on the tower. He told me the shit you did. Locust? Really?
Oh, come on. That was ingenious. You simple-minded non-mages wouldn't understand. Get a sense of humor. God is a comedian playing to an audience too afraid to laugh.
This is my last case. Done this for too long and it isn't getting easier. Murderers are getting smarter and more dangerous. If you couldn't tell from the wind mages.
You told us you had some bodies for us to examine? I assume they're the wind mage victims Xander told us about?
You assume right. Follow me.
Hershey led us down a dark hallway, into a room blocked by a shoddy wooden door. He opened it, and there were 2 bodies in the center of the room. They were covered in a sheet. Anything we need to know about these 2?
They were at a home west of Santasville, where they both murdered. Their usual MO, cuts and slashes, clean all over. Although we did find this on one of the bodies.
Wait, west? Xander said they were north.
No, I confirmed this. It was in the west.
Huh. Weird for Xander to get the directions wrong.
In any case, look at this.
Hershey removed a shiny object from under the sheet. It looked to be a 3-pronged fork. For some reason, it rang a bell. Didn't Xander describe this exact amulet to me? He mentioned Tara had one too. Seen anything like this before? This amulet?
Certain villages have customs that require all inhabitants to don a certain aesthetic to prove they really do live there. Those villages are typically extremely wary, and sometimes even hostile towards outsiders.
I believe Xander mentioned a friend of ours wore this.
Were they a victim?
No, they work at the tavern.
What? And they wear this amulet?
Yeah, what's the big deal?
What's the big deal? Are you for God's sake?
Hershey walked to the front of the room near us and opened a locked box on the table. He reached inside and pulled out several identical amulets. The same amulet as the one he had just shown us. 3-pronged trident with gold flecks on the outer prongs.
Every single time we found a new victim, at least one of them on the scene was wearing this at the time.
Well, did you not think that important to tell us? Do you know how vital that is?
I thought you knew. You were the ones to find the several of the bodies.
We weren't inspecting their jewelry like a bunch of greedy buzzards.
Look, we know it now. Now we have a motive. People with this amulet are being targeted. I think Xander mentioned this to us when he told us about this amulet.
I remember that. These wind mages swore to eradicate all that wore that necklace. Or something to that effect.
Do we have time of death?
Sure do. 42 hours ago. Both killed around the same time.
Edith, didn't Xander mention one of them had been dead beforehand?
You're right. 42 hours for one, maybe.
Noticed a few weird marks around the neck, probably from the necklace being ripped out. Take a look.
Hershey threw off the sheet to reveal 2 bodies. But they were 2 men. I furrowed my brow. This was getting weird. Xander wasn't perfect, but he was a talented scout. Directions wrong? Time of death off. Even the sex was mixed up. This was fishy. Xander told me that one victim was a middle-aged man and the other was a young woman.
No, this is... Oh, you mean the other victims? Yes, we have another pair of victims that already sent off. Yes, you said a man and a young woman.
Why didn't you tell us that?
I thought you knew.
Stop assuming such nonsense.
These other bodies, were they found in the north?
Yes, they were found in the northern homestead, outside the town.
Their times of death were slightly different.
Yes. One killed 40 hours ago, the other 42 hours ago.
42 hours ago, the same time as the other ones.
Yes. Which leads me to believe there are 2 wind mages.
2, but... Phineas put a hand on my shoulder. A serious expression spread across his face. I stopped speaking when I realized what we were dealing with. Hershey said this was his last case. I saw the weathering and the exhaustion on his face. Years of this had worn on him, and he was at his end. I thought to myself that maybe I should help the old man out by keeping him out of this entirely. I cleared my throat. That's dangerous. We'll let our comrades know. Thank you for the report. Hershey nodded, and we bowed politely. We walked out of the building with the amulet in hand that Phineas swiped when no one was looking. He handed it to me, and we walked back towards the inn. And here we thought this would be simple.
If those 2 groups were killed at the same time.
And Xander swears there were 2 wind mages in one location.
That can only mean that...
There were 3. I raised the amulet, watching it gently spin, contemplating the entire mystery surrounding this harmless little rock. 3 fucking mages.